It's my great pleasure on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the American Museum of Natural History to welcome you here today. I'm Louis Bernard, and we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the opening of the glorious Irma and Paul Milstein Family Hall of Ocean Life, one of the great icons of this museum. I don't know if many of you paused before entering the hall or if your breath was taken away by the big mammoth skeleton. But as you entered that hall, there is my favorite plaque in this museum, the dedication. It happens to be the Paul and Irma Milstein Hall of Extreme Mammals. But the dedication reads, "To given with love to New York City and all of our children," which is a theme that has been carried through by this family throughout the museum for well over 25 years. One of the wonderful events, I thought, was the Milstein family, to celebrate Irma and Paul's 50th wedding anniversary, gave a mobile museum of paleontology that goes out to schools across this city to expose children to science. It is one of the sweetest and most wonderful gifts that we have received during my tenure as chairman. And it tickles my heart every time that I think about it. Irma, of course, speaking of beloved objects, was on our board and much beloved by all of us. She was a fabulous trustee, and Irma, it is terrific to see you here today. It gives me great pleasure. But of course, the pièce de résistance is the great Milstein Family Hall of Ocean Life. I remember walking through it with Irma and Paul when we were talking about it as a concept. And Paul's eyes lighting up when he saw the scale and scope, and he visualized that this would become, which in fact it is, the most visited hall in this museum. And it is a spectacular hall. Not only did it launch us in a new wave of exhibitions, but it also refocused our commitment to the study of ocean and marine life, which of course all of us living on an island know is an extremely important undertaking. So to the Milstein family, to the love they have shown to this museum and to the city, I welcome you and thank you very much for your contribution in transforming the American Museum of Natural History. Thank you and enjoy luncheon.
It is such a privilege to gather here today with the Milstein family and all of you in this wonderfully intimate setting, intimate at least by museum standards, to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Milstein Family Hall of Ocean Life and, frankly, the Milstein family itself. And I can't help but say in that context how particularly delighted I am to see Irma here today looking not only so beautiful, but perfectly coiffed as always. Irma? Despite the relative serenity of this gracious Astor turret setting, the truth is that I think of the Milstein family as a force of nature. And just to be clear, a force of nature is defined as a natural phenomenon beyond or above mere human power. Remember those extreme mammals that Lewis alluded to. Of course, force of nature also includes the four fundamental forces in physics, including gravity and electromagnetism, a powerful weather event, a reason a legal contract might be nullified, a group of Marvel comic superheroes, a series of vampire romance novels, and some arcane aspect of the World of Warcraft online fantasy game, though in all truth, I really don't understand that one at all. But I do know what we mean by force of nature as a phenomenon, and that is the Milstein family, that has a profound, extraordinary, and hugely beneficial ongoing effect. You have a true and deep commitment to New York City and a keen understanding of the power of philanthropy to improve a community, enhance the lives of people in it, and bolster institutions that enrich, enliven, and serve that community like this museum. It was 10 years ago this month, actually this week, that we unveiled the magnificently restored and updated Milstein Hall of Ocean Life. I still remember extremely well speaking with Irma and Paul, and Irma, I know you'll recall this as well, the yin and the yang, if you will, about the project. Paul would ask, how many square feet? How many cubic feet? How much would the restoration cost per square foot? Irma would want to know how many school children will be affected, how many families will come. And of course, both would want to be assured that it would be utterly magnificent and scientifically and educationally brilliant. And of course, it is. Paul and Irma's great tradition of philanthropy is now being carried forward by their sons and daughters, Howard and his wife Abby, Edward and his wife Robin. We're so pleased you could be here today. Barbara and her husband David, and Roz and her husband Jerry. The Milstein Family Hall of Ocean Life is, of course, dominated by the great blue whale, full of eye-catching, glorious, sometimes truly strange wonders of the ocean that Melanie Stiasny, the curator, has brought to us. Fantastic portrayal of the last frontier on the planet, and one in urgent need of conservation and protection. These displays are not just exhibits, but gateways to learning, fantastic, mind-opening experiences that craft a sense of curiosity, wonder, and awe, and that prompt children and adults alike to rethink what they think they know and to want to learn more. What a gift. The hall, so large and spectacular, has always been an important one for the museum, and since the restoration, even more so. It can be seen truly as a crossroads of the museum, a platform for our science, a showcase for breathtaking exhibitry, the world's greatest and most fun classroom, and beloved by children and families alike the world over. It is also the venue for many of our most important gatherings, from galas that support the museum in grand style, to our annual spirited Kwanzaa celebration, from the Urban Advantage Science Fair, where hundreds of promising new urban students in middle school present their science projects, to the distinguished setting of our Gilder Graduate School's first ever convocation. It was the location of the announcement of Mayor Bloomberg's environmental initiative, hosted the UN General Assembly, and reverberated with ideas at our very own International Summit on K-12 education. It is also home to the Milstein Science Series, an exceptional program that brings families in close touch with museum science and scientists free of charge. More about that in a moment. The family's support has followed a clear and continuous pathway that I trust you'll find recognizable. Manifest first in its support for the transformation, as Lewis alluded to, of the fourth floor fossil halls, which, like the Milstein Family Hall of Ocean Life, is deeply rooted in a complex, intellectual, and scientific foundation that finds its expression in the most magical and marvelous of ways. This winning alchemy was manifest as well in the spectacular Milstein Family Hall of Ocean Life. Less evident is that in both instances, your gift also enabled us to leverage critical public support and ensured that we could continue to maintain and refurbish the hall and the science and help to promote it, including through digital avenues as they increasingly become available to us. Most recently, Howard and Abby have created the Milstein Science Series that I mentioned earlier. And just this past February, reflecting Howard's powerful intellect and involvement, the Milstein Vision also found voice in the Milstein Science Symposium, a high-level international gathering of conservation researchers, policymakers, and educators, hosted by our Center for Biodiversity and Conservation, and discussing this year the conservation of island systems. The symposium is a perfect expression of the Milstein's vision and impact here, bridging the gap between science and society, fostering a dynamic, rigorous scientific enterprise and community, and educating and inspiring the public. Of course, that's our vision too, and we are honored to have your partnership in it. It has been observed that a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, shows the way. This is precisely what Howard and Abby, before them Irma and Paul, and all of the Milsteins, really, each in his and her own way, have and has done by sharing your enlightened vision of philanthropy and community service, of which we and our ever-growing audience are very privileged to be the beneficiaries. We are so pleased to have the Milstein family as part of our museum family, and we hope you know that you always have a home here. I'm supposed to introduce Howard now, and I'm going to, but it seems a little awkward to introduce Howard to his own family. So I'm just going to say that we would like now to hear a few words from Howard on his own behalf, on behalf of the family, and you all know that he's a great civic leader, a great intellect, and a great spokesperson.
Thank you, Ellen, for that warm and generous introduction, and thank you, most importantly, for your remarks on the very gratifying for us role that the Milstein Hall of Ocean Life and so many of our other activities have played for the community. So I made a few notes. The other day on TV, I saw a show called The Treasures of New York, and one of the treasures of New York, it was on PBS, is, of course, the American Museum of Natural History. And they interviewed Ellen, who looked quite young and energetic, and Louis. You and I look about the same, Louis. So let me first start with Louis and the board of directors. You know, my grandfather set a standard for all of our philanthropy, which was to support individuals of excellence in institutions of excellence. And the indispensable thing for an institution of excellence is the board of directors. And Louis, your leadership of the board for long enough to make an impact is crucial. And I think in many organizations, there's a strict following of changing of the guard and a lot of loss of institutional knowledge, memory, relevance, and vision. And so I think by having a steady hand at the helm of the board for more than a decade, the community has been a great beneficiary. So thank you, Louis. And of course, Ellen, you know, I thought the whole show was going to be on you, the treasure of New York. And of course, you know, Teddy Roosevelt was featured. There's a new little statue of Teddy Roosevelt in the lobby, and kids flock around it. And I think re-emphasizing the role at the national level of the mission of the American Museum of Natural History is appropriate and couldn't be a better vehicle than Teddy Roosevelt. So I think that's a wonderful touch. But, you know, there's some kind of a dinner every year called something like the Monuments of New York or something. Have you been one of those yet? Okay, no, not old enough. Yeah. Well, actually, that happened to me last week when I got a Lifetime Achievement Award, and I said, yeah, I didn't realize I was eligible for this because I'm still too young. But in any event, so Ellen, yes, you are one of the treasures of New York in the roles that you've played, but especially here at the American Museum of Natural History. Now, yesterday was Mother's Day, but today is Mother's Day too, because it's all about my mother, Irma, and her role in our family, because we followed Adam Smith's prescription for the wealth of nations. We had a division of labor, and my father did all the business, and my mother did all the community, cultural philanthropy. And so she spearheaded all this, and we've always had an interest, as Ellen indicated, in children, in families. How would this impact other families and their children? How could we bring the magic and the wonder of the natural world to young children and families so that it could promote their curiosity and ultimate education and knowledge about the world and contributions to society. So my mother, I know, takes great satisfaction from her service on the board for many years. And this is certainly her favorite involvement. And so it's wonderful to be here the day after Mother's Day to celebrate with you and all the other mothers. Speaking of which, my lovely wife Abby is here, and it's important for me to remember that. Sometimes I don't get that in every speech. That's never a good thing. That's never a good thing. And I want to recognize, in addition to the leaders of the museum who are here, our people who are here: Bobby Byrne, one of our partners; Barbara Rarin, my father's personal assistant; Doug Diamond, one of my college roommates; Barry Friedberg, my partner at the bank; Mike Hoden, another one of my college roommates; Alan Weiner, another partner; and then coming around, my son Michael, sitting next to Grandma Irma; my nephew Andrew, Eddie's son; Eddie, my brother, who's makes sure that we have the finer things in life available to us. I'll be visiting our vineyard soon, and so Eddie said to me, he said, we should have supplied the wine today. Next time. And Harriet Edelman, who's also a partner at the bank and coincidentally my cousin. And so did I get everybody who's here who came for us? Yes, and there were others who wanted to come, but it didn't happen that way. Okay, so now, Father's Day. Well, some of you are thinking, well, it's not Father's Day yet, but yesterday was Father's Day in the sense that May 12th was my father's birthday. And one of the reasons that this is a very timely event is to remember him. And just over my shoulder, you'll see a building that we built, really the last building my father took an active hand in building, called Bristol Plaza, 200 East 65th Street. There's a little M on it. It's that one there with the kind of top that has an M. If you look at it from a certain angle, you can see it. And my mother still lives on the 50th floor there on the top floor. So on Father's Day, that brings to mind my father, who we're very complimented to be a force of nature, but in truth, my father really was a force of nature. And also in a dimension that Ellen didn't touch on, which he was not constrained by convention. He was powerful in any direction he chose to go, and he chose some unusual directions, including the banana business and all kinds of other things not usually pursued by people in the real estate business in New York. But anyway, this is a wonderful day to remember my father as well. So now we come around to the main event, which is for us to all relish and enjoy the magnificence of our American Museum of Natural History. When we talk about the extreme mammal exhibit, I think, well, this is perfectly appropriate given my girth and my brother's, that we're in the extreme mammal category, so it was a natural interest for us. And this morning I was chatting, and someone said, well, how did you become interested in the whale room? I said, well, I'm sure my mother took us here. I think I probably was 6 or so. And being in this immense space, and as a small child, even if you go back to your junior high school or your kindergarten, you'll see that everything looks so much smaller than when you were little. So imagine a very small person in the very big space. And I remember craning my head up to see this giant blue whale. And, it started a fascination with the natural world and science, exactly as the museum would want and the board would want. So thank you for having this celebration with us. We look forward to continuing our relationship with the museum. And we want to congratulate you on the wonderful progress that you've continued to make, Louis, with your leadership. And, of course, Ellen, the day-to-day, every day it becomes more fabulous. So thank you for all you're doing. We're happy to play a small part in trying to make this an even better place for our community. Thank you.